Welcome to All Pro Football Data. My name is Jim Coburn, and today's episode we're talking about Tee Higgins in terms of future NFL wide receiver signings. There's been a lot of wide receivers that have been signed recently, and Justin Jefferson and Jalen Waddle. But I wanted to talk about one of the remaining wide receivers out there that hasn't got his contract yet, in Tee Higgins. We're going to get into all of his data from his pre-draft profile to his post-draft profile to determine what contract he should get based on data, based on the current market, and all those other sort of things. So stay tuned into the end of the video where I reveal what my general recommendation for him would be based on data. But let's get to a couple things to start. So first off, the setup. Tee Higgins was drafted by the Cincinnati Bengals in the 2020 NFL draft class in the second round. Since that time, he has started 53 games and has accumulated 3,684 receiving yards and 24 touchdowns. Higgins is the top complementary wide receiver to Jamar Chase, who is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL based on data and just based on any general statistics. But before his NFL success, he was also a strong NFL prospect at Clemson. So, taking a look at his Clemson production, he had good numbers in terms of receiving market share, total offensive market share, and touchdown market share. So, when you look at his data here, he was above the starter thresholds and was in the general area in terms of Pro Bowl thresholds, not quite near all the starter averages of the position. But what made Tee Higgins such a strong candidate came down to his efficiency scores because he was incredibly efficient with the football. Yards per reception, touchdowns per touch, all those areas were fantastic for him from Clemson. And then on top of that, when you look at athleticism traits, he's not the most athletic wide receiver ever, although that isn't the biggest thing in the world, but he at least had average speed for the position, along with below average explosiveness and below average flexibility. So you might look at this and go, okay, based on this data, he would be a bum. But no, based on his production metrics, he had strong production at the position. And then when he gets to adjusted production, this is the biggest thing where he really makes his money. His age score was fantastic. He had a great MSA rating and a fantastic pass score. This essentially takes a look at his production for his level of competition, for the team that he played on, and for his age. So his overall production wasn't the best. His athleticism wasn't the best either, but he did have good production for his age and did it on a very strong football team against fairly competitive competition. So those are the biggest things that really helped him out in terms of his progress and as his potential at the NFL level. The Tee Higgins pre-draft projection was simply this. Tee Higgins had an overall EAV or data score of 84.93 out of 100 coming out of college. And his draft status as an early second rounder upped his potential as a starter to Pro Bowl wide receiver in the long term. But how has he performed in the NFL since he was drafted? Well, let's find out as we analyze his production metrics now. So taking a look at his production, NFL production wise, starting from 2020 until 2023, he's been pretty much in the 80 percentile in terms of most of his production metrics in terms of yards and touchdowns and first downs. He's been in the 90 plus percentile. So even though he hasn't been the best in terms of getting receptions and targets and touchdowns, he has done well in terms of getting first downs with the football. On top of that, when you look at his other data, so this is his per snap data in terms of yards before contact, yards after contact, A dot, and how many broken tackles he had per reception. He was really good in terms of all those metrics in 2020 until about 2021, and then he kind of dropped off a little bit in 2022 in terms of his yards after contact per reception and A dot, and even his broken tackles. And in 2023, he also had some issues there as well. So he hasn't been the healthiest of wide receivers ever. He has missed some time here and there for different things. But he is fairly strong production regardless of those issues that he's had, and on top of the fact that he has to share targets and touches with Jamar Chase. Then, of course, you look at his other micro production in terms of drop percentage. His drop percentage has been okay. His quarterback rating in terms of when he's targeted has also been pretty decent in terms of the 70 to 80 percentile. His TD percentage and first down percentage have also been very decent as well, and solid numbers overall for a wide receiver of his caliber. Then when you look at his overall production, in terms of his macro production. He had his best season in 2021, and then he kind of had some similar seasons in 2022 and 2020. And then in 2023, he had a down year that year. A lot of that due to missing games that year. He missed more games that year compared to years past. His efficiency has been pretty above average as well. And Rex Starr takes a look at the production plus the efficiency. And for the most part, 2020, 2021 were probably his best seasons as an NFL player. 2022, a little bit off. And then 2023, of course, had some issues that year in terms of playing time. So that's the general nutshell of his career as a player, is that he's had some really great NFL seasons, along with sort of a drop off a little bit in terms of 2022 down to 2023, which kind of makes you question, like, is this guy worth a contract like that? At least a contract that he might be looking for at the position. Which brings us to this, which is the correlation coefficients for wins and receiving production. So I rattled off a lot of statistics to you guys, and I know a lot of you guys, your heads might be swimming, but this is a visualization about what metrics really matter. So I looked at all the data from 2018 into 2023 to see what correlates most to wins. So is it above average receiving yardage? Is it above average targets? Is it above average receptions? Is it above average first downs, yards before contact, um, yak, breaking tackles, drops, etc., and or A dot even, average depth of target. And the data suggests that the biggest thing that really matters in terms of correlation to wins is yards. Well, actually touchdowns, excuse me, at 0.52. And then, of course, after that, you got first downs and yards before contact. Then you got yards or receiving yardage, then yak, and then you have all the other metrics after that. So this is interesting because, other than fantasy football purposes, which this could be applicable to that, to be honest, as well, but just in terms of wins, because if you're watching this channel, I will do fantasy videos every once in a while, but what matters in terms of winning football games, the money ball of it all. And when it comes to wide receivers, it really comes down to touchdowns. It comes down to getting first downs, yards before contact, yardage, all those other things are really the most important things. Drops, not that much. Average depth of target, not that much. And even the individual or per reception numbers are not the most correlative. And a lot of that just has to do with the fact that the yak numbers and the yards before contact numbers, a guy might have a really good yards before contact per reception score, but he didn't have very much yardage as a player. That's kind of what that is that thing. So I think that definitely is a good thing to kind of potentially project a player, but you also have to understand that they have to have that usage. The usage is definitely important as well to kind of determine that. So in the overall view, again, yards before contact is really important, as well as yak, and then the per reception aspect of it is something that I think is more of a micro aspect or efficiency sort of aspect of it that I think is important to know, but you also have to understand and recognize that you're going to have that issue because they're not. It's not a full. You could have a guy that has 99 percentile yak after receptions, but he only had 10 receptions. So again, that's not a large enough sample to really determine, like, okay, if I throw him the football more, is he going to maintain this production? That's the biggest thing that I think really matters, and that's what this data shows. So based on this data that I just showed you, this was the ranks for Tee Higgins. So I took all that data and I graded him along with every wide receiver from 2018 to 2023 to determine, where they rank. So based on all those numbers I just showed you, give a general score to them and see where they ranked based on what matters to winning football games. And when it comes to Tee Higgins, he ranked 12th in 2021. He was 15th in 2020. 2022 he was 17th, and then in 2023 he was 52nd. A lot of that's because of missing games, but that also shows you how much missing games can affect, of course, winning the football game. That's why they say the best availability, or best ability, I should say, is availability. That's the main reason why that is. So based on these numbers for Higgins, he's on the franchise tag right now, which is right in line with his upside. His upside is a top 12 wide receiver. If he played every single season from now and in the future and did the same thing he did back in 2021, he would be a top 12 wide receiver, which is what he's being paid as right now. With an 8.54 league cap percentage. So again, I care more about that than the general salary number, because again, the cap's always going to get larger. I think the projected cap is going to be like $300 billion pretty soon in like 2 years. So we just hit the 200 million mark, and now we're going to get into 300 million, and then eventually we're going to be at 400 million. So that number is going to keep going up, but the percentage of the cap is really what's important. And based on this numbers, I would say that Higgins, if you're being fair to him, if you're being fair, he should be considered in the top 12 to 15 money, more in line with his previous performances. We've had 3 years worth of really solid production from him where he's pretty much been a top 12 to 15, 17 wide receiver. That's what he should be paid. That's what he's being paid as right now. Of course, he probably want more money than that, but that's the general consensus, with that based on his data. So based on this information, the contract. So again, this is what you all been waiting for in terms of this video. The contract I think that would be best for him is give him a 9% league cap for him. So the 9% is a little bit. Basically makes him top 12 consistently from 2025 to 2028 in terms of that. And based on this number, I think you would give him a total contract of $120 million. I think you have to give him 94 million guaranteed, and the reason why is because he has played 79% of his snaps total. So I understand that may not be the best reason to do that, but that's kind of how I feel about it. Is in terms of how often he was able to see the football field. I think that's what the guaranteed percentage should be. If you have a guy who misses like 50% of his games, obviously there's a lot more risk with that player, so you should adjust accordingly. There might be some NFL agent out there that has a different calculator for this type of thing, but that's just my general feelings on it. It could be different from your opinion, but that's just how I feel. In fact, let me know in the comment section below, how much do you think his contract should be guaranteed? Do you think that's a little high? Do you think it's a little steep? But he has been a fairly consistent wide receiver for 3 years in his career, so that's why I did that. Now, on top of that, I think a signing bonus for him would be probably about 16 million. I think his average per year salary would be 25 million over the course of 4 years. So yes, a 4-year contract. I think that is what really will make him happy the most, is making sure that you're really investing in him in terms of the prime of his year. Most NFL wide receivers typically peak around age 24 to 26, and then they have a little bit of a decline in the age 27, 28, and then 29 is like the last year that they usually have really good production. So I'm basically trying to get the good years out of him with this contract here, and really trying to capitalize on that for him. So there's not much progression with this contract though. But this is the fairest contract for both parties. So a lot of times with NFL contracts, you'll see the numbers, the average salary will go up over time. And I think that a lot of the reasons why they do this is because they're trying to backload those deals a lot of times. They're trying to give them a really big signing bonus early that doesn't affect the cap, and then they increase the salary in the back end so they don't have to worry about it until the back end. And by that point, the dead money is not that big of an issue, so they can just cut them without major ramifications to the cap. Dead money meaning the money you got to pay them once you cut them. But I think in terms of Tee Higgins' case, I mean, this is the fairest contract I think you could possibly have for him based on his salary. This is the baseline I think for that, what that contract really should be, because he's been a top 12 wide receiver, top 12 to top 17. You know what his upside is. I think the best football is still ahead of him as well because of how young he is. So this is the type of contract I really think that he should have. Now, if he ends up in a different situation, so that's another thing to kind of think about here, is because he is paired with Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, and he's going to command the most targets because of that. So that's going to take away production from Tee Higgins. Maybe if Higgins was on a team separate from the Bengals where he was really the number one guy, he would command a higher cap percentage. I think that's definitely worthy of consideration, which makes the contract I just showed look a little meek in comparison with that other contract might be. But in terms of keeping him on the Bengals, again, to be fair to Higgins, to be fair to him, to be fair as a Bengals GM, as a Bengals organization, to be fair to him, The biggest thing I'm trying to do is be fair. That's the type of contract. The contract I just showed you is realistically what he's worth in terms of the situation that he's in right now, in terms of what his upside is. That is the fairest contract. How you divide it up, and maybe you back in more of it to kind of pay him a little bit less early on, so you get more cap space. It's totally up to you in terms of how you do that. But I think that's the fairest contract that you could possibly have for Tee Higgins, to keep him on the Bengals, to keep him on the team where he really made a name for himself, to keep him on the team where most of his jerseys are being worn right now. That's the fair contract. That's really what it is with him. So again, in terms of his overall upside, that's really hard to quantify, because again, he's been sharing touches and targets with Jamar Chase. So if he goes to another team, he might have been more productive than what we saw. But he has shown to be a consistent top 12 to 17 wide receiver in the NFL, which is big. It's a bit that's very big. It's very important for a guy like him. However, what is clear is that neither the Bengals nor Higgins are happy with their current situation. I don't think Higgins is happy. He's definitely given the vibes of like, I want to go, I want to leave, I'm tired of this. And of course, the Bengals on the other side of the token are like kind of like thinking of themselves like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? You know, in terms of replacing him, because he has been a really stable piece to this Bengals offense, and you're gonna lose that over $10 million a year. I mean, I think that's it's a little ridiculous to me. Again, I know 2023 wasn't the best year, but again, most of his career there, he has been very decent. And I think this is, again, the fairest contract you possibly have for him. But overall, I want to know in the comment section below, what do you believe Tee Higgins is worth? Do you feel like the contract I presented was a fair deal? Do you not think it was a fair deal in terms of his overall production, everything else like that? And also let me know also what other future signing videos you want me to do. There's a lot of NFL players that have contracts that are coming up, and you might want to get this treatment to it. You might not. We'll see. But let me know also with that. Like, comment, and subscribe if you really like these channel. If you really like this channel and you want to see it really thrive, sharing the videos, liking the videos, commenting on the videos, doing all that stuff really helps out the channel exponentially. Also, follow my Patreon page at patreon.com/jcoburn. Check out my X, formerly known as Twitter account, at Geometrics, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.